Hello and welcome back to DocTrack Administrator Training. With this lesson, we'll look at creating DocTrack Cloud Storage Users records for AWS. In the previous lesson, we created these records for Cloud Storage IDs set up for a Box Cloud account. With both Box and Dropbox, you set up the Cloud Storage IDs with the option of specifying a single user. At that point, setting up the DocTrack Cloud Storage user record is optional. You would only do this if a particular user had different access restrictions than those of the user specified on the Cloud ID. But the process is quite different with the S3 storage feature for AWS. When you set up those Cloud IDs, you're required to specify at least one IAM user. In fact, you can only specify those account users in this form, and not in the DocTrack Cloud Storage user form. Instead, you use this form to identify the Sightline and ShopTrack users in your company associated with each of the IAM users you defined in the Cloud ID. And unlike Box and Dropbox, a user must be associated with an IAM user in this form, or they will not be able to open the files in S3. We'll start by selecting our S3 standard Cloud ID. Then we need to select an IAM user here. Now remember, I have two of them defined: Lake, which only has read and execute authority, and Lake 2, which also has the ability to add files and folders. We'll want to create one cloud storage user record here for each of them. We'll start with Lake. Then our description will be S3 standard read only. In the Sightline user section, checking this field will cause all documents to open in the DocTrack document viewer. This can be especially handy if you don't want the users to edit or download the file in the associated program in Windows. For the Lake users, I'll go ahead and check this box. The field labeled AWS ARN policy is required if you're implementing this for a DoD Trade Secrets account. Since we're not doing that, it's optional, and it's beyond the scope of this course. Now, normally with Box or Dropbox, we'd have the option to specify the credentials of a cloud account here. But because this is for AWS, those users were already defined on the Cloud ID, so there's nothing to do here. Instead, we'll go to the User Access tab. Under Application, you'll see that we can set up access here for Sightline users, ShopTrack users, and DocTrack polling. Let's start with Sightline. Under the User ID, I can select individual Sightline users to associate with the Lake IAM user in S3. Depending on the level of security you want to implement, you may want to create records in this grid for each individual user and deny this access to everyone else. But for our example, I'll select the asterisk. Notice that this field is disabled because it only applies for Cloud IDs configured for DoD Trade Secrets. Next, I'll set up access for a couple of ShopTrack users. We'll do it first for David Daniels and then Juanita Davis. Okay, that'll do for the Lake IAM user, so I'll save it. Now let's create another one for the Lake 2 user. We'll select the same S3 standard Cloud ID. But this time we'll select Lake 2 as the IAM user. Then I'll enter the user description as S3 standard read and write. Since these users are more advanced, I'm going to leave this box unchecked so that they can open the files in the associated application. Now, before I do anything else, I'm going to add a line here for DocTrack polling. We want polling to not only read files in our S3 bucket, but also store files there that are generated by DocTrack Form Output Profiles for Sightline reports. And to do that, we'll need to associate it with Lake 2. We'll also need to add users here for anyone that will be using DocTrack document saving rules associated with this cloud account. We'll go over this in more depth later, but for now, let's create another line here for P. Simmons as a Sightline user. All right, we're done for now. Let's try it out. Okay, I'm logged in right now as Claire Summers, and I'm focused on this customer order record. In DocTrack Flex, I see that there's an attachment with the S3 standard ID to the customer purchase order. When I double-click it, the file opens in the DocTrack document viewer, just as directed in the cloud storage user record. Now I'm logged in as Pete Simmons, and I'm on the same customer order. This time, when I go to DocTrack Flex and open the customer PO in S3, the file opens in the associated program. Why is that significant? Well, P. Simmons is actually referenced in both of my cloud storage user records. In addition to being referenced directly in the Lake 2 record, he's also included in the Lake record because it's assigned to all users. This illustrates that when a user tries to access a file through this S3 Cloud ID, it will first look to see if a cloud storage user record is set up for the user by name. If one doesn't exist, then the one referenced with an asterisk will apply. Keep in mind that how you set users up in this form will have a lot to do with how you set up DocTrack document saving rules for cloud accounts. And we'll learn about that on our next lesson. See you then.